Welcome back, friends, to another session of fluid mechanics and rate processes. We've just finished similitude and modeling, and now we are going to use that to an engineering application, which is flow through pipes. Okay. So, this is a very important application, and it finds itself in many engineering situations. So, suppose I want to transport oil from, let us say, the oil well to the refinery, and then again from the refinery to some other places. Usually pipes are used, okay? So the oil is transported through these pipes, or for that matter, if I want to supply water to, let us say, through a network of pipe to residential areas or to the industry. Again, pipes, the flow in pipes is extremely important. In our own body, we could have flows inside blood vessels, we could have flows inside our respiratory tracts, okay? Food pipe, for example. So, all these are very important applications. Now, flow through a pipe could be fairly complex, although it appears very simple. So, one is because of the geometry. We have in this course looked at flow through a pipe with circular cross section. So, the cross section could be more complicated, or this pipe could have bends. Okay. It could also have surfaces which are rough. Okay. It could also have a situation where actually because of this flow it could undergo vibrations. So we are going to look at fairly simple situations, address some complexities, and hopefully this will give you an exposure to these flows in real life situation. So let me recall for you what we have done so far, okay, in the context of pipes. So if you recollect, we looked at the flow through a circular pipe, and this was the Hagen-Poiseuille flow. Which essentially talked about, let us say I have a pipe of circular cross section. So this was a pipe of infinite length, and I took a section of it. Okay. And what we assumed is that the diameter of the pipe is d. We were able to do the analysis if the flow is steady, it is laminar, it is fully developed, as you recollect, the fully developed flow implies that things do not change in the z direction as far as the velocity field is concerned. The pressure, of course, will change. Okay. So when there is a flow through this pipe, there is of course going to be a pressure gradient. In fact, for the fully developed flow, we saw that the pressure gradient is a constant. So the pressure changes linearly. We also assumed when we did this analysis that it is an axisymmetric flow . And there is no swirl. Okay, that means there is no angular speed of the flow in this pipe. And what we were able to show is that for this very special case, the velocity profile is parabolic. So let me show you the velocity profile. So if I drew the cross section, then this is how the velocity profile looked like. And this remains unchanged for all values of z. what we were able to show is, I am just showing you the formula that we had got for the velocity profile, that Vz, that means the axial component of speed, changes only radially, and that is given as minus k by 4 pi r square minus r square, where r is actually d by 2, where d is the diameter of the pipe and small r is the location at which I am interested. K here is the pressure gradient, which we were able to argue that it is constant along the pipe. Okay. We were also able to show that the velocity at the center line is actually the maximum at any location along r, and as you can see, that happens at r equal to 0. So, that is minus k over 4 pi r square. So, we can write Vz as actually V max times 1 minus r square r square. So, that is the parabolic profile. Okay. And we were also able to show the relationship between the flow rate and this velocity profile. So, let me recollect that for you as well. Q dot is the volume flow rate and this we were able to show is given as, of course, pi r square times the V average, and V average we can calculate from this velocity profile, and I had shown you that V average works out to V max by 2. Okay. We also defined something called the Reynolds number based on the diameter of the pipe, and that we defined as rho times the V average times the diameter divided by the coefficient of viscosity. So, you will notice that for this pipe, because the velocity profile does not change with z, so for this fully developed steady flow, I would have a given Reynolds number. Okay. It depends on the diameter of the pipe, the average speed, which in turn depends on the pressure gradient, the coefficient of viscosity and density. Okay. We were also able to do the following. We came up with something called the wall shear stress. So, I encourage you to go through your notes. We had discussed this in fair detail and we tried to non-dimensionalize it, and from that we were able to talk about Cf, which is the coefficient of skin friction which actually was defined as the shear stress and non-dimensionalized with some kind of a dynamic pressure, and we use that as rho times V average squared. Okay. And we were actually able to show that this would be 16 by RED. Okay. So, to summarize, what we were able to see is that for the laminar flow Cf, which is the skin friction coefficient, that is 16 by RED. And I had also mentioned to you in the same lecture that for turbulent flow, people have estimated Cf, and that value turned out to be a certain relationship which is essentially 0.0791 times Re raised to 0.2. Okay. And then we were able to draw a graph and look at how the skin friction coefficient changes with Reynolds number. Okay. So that's what we had studied through about flow through a pipe. Now in real life, even when we look at flow through this simple straight pipe, there are complications. And I want to point out to you two complications. So the first one is the entrance. And the second one is the transition to turbulence. Okay. We had spoken about both of these in some detail in the earlier sessions, but let me elaborate a little bit more. So it turns out if I push flow through a pipe, then it is not going to become fully developed as soon as it enters the pipe. It takes a little bit of length for it to become fully developed. So that's one issue. That's the issue of entrance length. The second one is that the flow may actually transition to a turbulent state. So it may not stay laminar, and then you would have to decide, which of these correlations is more suited for the analysis. So let's look at them one at a time. So first I want to talk about the entrance length. So I would like to show you a small picture of how the entrance length is defined. So let's say LE is the entrance length, and I look at a pipe. This is an axisymmetric pipe with a circular cross section. Let me draw the center line. So the flow enters on the left and it has a uniform profile. So let's say this flow has a uniform profile. So uniform at entrance. Then because of the viscous action, a boundary layer starts developing. So because of the no slip boundary condition, the fluid particles that are in contact with the surface of this pipe, they actually are at rest, right? But the ones which are far away, maybe close to the center line, they still do not feel that there is any viscous action. So you get a profile where the viscous effects they develop, and they may look something like this. So this is the region of where the viscous effect is important. Okay, so in this region, which is between the plate and the dashed line, the flow feels the viscous effect, and then beyond LE, so this distance is LE, and beyond LE you would see a fully developed flow where the viscous effect has percolated radially inwards to the pipe, and now the entire core of the flow has the viscous effect. So if I try to look at a profile, let's say at this location, so maybe I call this the location A, then I would see that this profile, this section over here has a uniform flow because the viscous effect has not reached it yet. But then close to the wall there is a viscous effect. So I would get a profile like this. On the other hand, if I look at a profile, let's say at location B, then I am going to see that at the center again up to this region I have a uniform flow, but now the viscous effect has reached up to this point. And finally, at the end of the entrance zone, I would get a perfectly parabolic profile So this here is the fully developed flow. Now the relevant question is, how long is this length, the entrance length? So if I have a pipe which is so short, so suppose I am supplying fuel to my car, okay, so there is a fuel pump and it supplies, there is a pipe that supplies the fuel from, let us say, the storage tank to the engine, okay, and that pipe is so short that it lies within the entrance length, and I want to find out what should be the power which should drive this or the pump, the power of the pump that should drive this flow, and I want to estimate that. I do not want to put a very big pump for obvious reasons, because that would itself take energy, and I also do not want to put a very weak pump, because that would not then do the job. So it would be very useful to estimate what exactly is the friction loss in this pipe, okay, and therefore I need to know what is the entrance length. So people have made measurements and they have found the following, okay. So from various measurements, the entrance length by diameter, so it is a non-dimensional number now, is given by following correlations. So there is a correlation for the laminar flow and there is a correlation for turbulent flow. So the entrance length by D, I would like to say this is for laminar and this one is for turbulent. So for the laminar flow it is essentially 0.0575 by RED, and for the turbulent it is 4.4 times RED raised to 0.167. Okay. Now as you know, the Reynolds number is the ratio of the inertial forces to the viscous forces, okay, and obviously if I have very large viscous forces, so suppose I had a flow that comes in and there was very large diffusion, the viscosity, the viscous effects are dominant, then they would quickly give me the mixing of the flow and I would get a fully developed flow. So for small Reynolds number, my entrance length is going to be small. If I had a large Reynolds number where the viscous effects were small compared to the inertial effects, so the flow comes in with a certain inertia, but the diffusion is not enough, then it would take a huge length for the flow to become fully developed. So that is the rationale of why this looks like a linear relationship. Okay. Now let us try to estimate that what could be a typical entrance length. So let us look at a laminar flow, which brings us to the question of transition to turbulence. Okay. for how long or for what Reynolds number does the flow remain laminar. So, we will talk about that in a minute, but suppose I am interested in, let us say, something like a Reynolds number of 2300. Okay. So, consider RED equal to 2300. So, I have a flow in a pipe, and based on the average speed and the diameter, the Reynolds number is 2300. The question I am asking is, what happens to the entrance length for laminar flow and what happens to turbulent flow? And it turns out LE by D is, for this Reynolds number, I have worked it out, this would be 138 for laminar, and it is 16.03 for smooth pipe in turbulent flow. And that is what I would get from this correlation. So, what does that tell us? That for the same Reynolds number, if my flow was laminar, it takes a long length, okay, about 140 diameters, for the flow to become fully developed. On the other hand, if I had a turbulent flow, then it could become fully developed only within 16 diameters of length. Okay. And it makes sense. Okay. A turbulent flow actually causes a lot of mixing, and therefore, the velocity profiles become fully developed sooner than they would become for laminar flow, which has less mixing. Okay. All right. So, that's the entrance length, and for applications where my pipes are so short, then these correlations about estimating friction factor or skin friction for fully developed flow would run into a problem. Now, let us talk about the transition to turbulence. Okay.